Welcome to Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Biomutant. I played it on the Xbox Series X. It's also available on the Xbox Series S, Xbox One, PS4, PS5, and PC. So let's start with the story. Yeah. You play as some weird little anthropomorphic creature, and there's a bunch of other anthropomorphic creatures, and this is a post-apocalyptic world. And basically there's some giant monsters that need to be dealt with to protect a tree of life. There's some other tribes, and you need to, help out a tribe. You pick a main tribe at the beginning, and then you go and fight other tribes throughout, but I'll tell you, it's not interesting. Honestly, the story is stuff we have all heard before, and it's just not done in an interesting way. It doesn't add anything new to anything that we have already experienced, and I'm going to start bleeding into the audio right now, and that is because the only voiceover work is done by a narrator. Each of the characters does speak, but it's this made-up weird language, and it's all translated to you through this narrator, so it kind of removes any personality from any of the other characters in this game. But like I said, everything in the story, not just the dialogue, all of it is told to you by this one narrator, and it just kind of loses any gravity. It just strips away from the overall experience because the characters lack any personality, the story itself, the way it's delivered, lacks any personality, and it just gets boring. On top of that, this is another one of those games where they've got a message and they really are just really preachy about it. I don't mind when there's a message in games, but the story should be more important. Otherwise, like I've said before, go make a fucking documentary. But also, the dialogue is really poorly written and changes tenses, and it just doesn't always match up or flow. It just doesn't make sense. Like rescuing certain creatures, they'll then ask you for help, but you've already rescued them, so you've already helped them. Why are they asking you for help? And then if you agree to help them, they just leave. You don't get a new quest. It doesn't make sense. But let's continue on with the audio. As I already said, there's just the one narrator that's really the only voice you get, and he doesn't put that much effort in, so it takes away because he's not really delivering anything in an interesting way. Also, there is music, but it's barely noticeable. I really could care less that it even is there, and there's a lot of times where there just isn't any music. Oh, also the narrator says just random shit at the most random times, and it sounds like it's supposed to be deep and meaningful, but it just doesn't matter, and you don't even know why it's being said. Then there's the sound effects, which I will say the sound effects work for the game because it is a more cartoony game and the sound effects are cartoony, so they fit. But that's about all I can really say for them. That's about the best thing about the audio, and that's kind of sad. So let's get into the gameplay mechanics and whatnot, and this is a third-person open-world RPG, and the combat is nothing you haven't already seen before. I mean, the main quest is essentially go around, take down other tribes, go around, beat up big bosses, and that's it. It's generic, it's something you've seen plenty of times before. Going around taking down the tribal fortresses isn't even done in an interesting way. They have like 3 ways of doing it, and you just repeat that. It's boring, there's no real unique element to it. There are side missions, but when you begin to just lose interest in everything in the game, it's hard to care about those as well. As for the combat, I mean, it's functional. It's actually surprisingly deep, but it's completely pointless. Like, that amount of depth that this game actually does try to provide, it doesn't really succeed at, is pointless, because everything boils down to, can I beat it with my melee weapon? If I can't, strafe around it and shoot it repeatedly. Everything boils down to that. Like, not even like just beat it with your melee weapon, use the same basic combo over and over and over. Using more complicated combos doesn't do you any good. It's not any better than just using the same basic initial combo. There are some crafting elements, but they're not that well done. There's just too many resources. It gets a little obnoxious. And honestly, the world is poorly mapped out, and guiding you through it is poorly done. It just doesn't work well. Supposedly you have this super advanced little robot that's helping you out, but it doesn't do shit. So really, everything that is in the gameplay is just this generic shit that you've experienced before, and experienced better pretty much everywhere else that you've experienced this stuff. There are elements that I'm definitely skipping over, but that's because they're just not worth getting into. Except for the lock-on in this game. I am going to get into that, and I'm going to shit on it because it sucks. It doesn't work well for the shooting, and since you can sort of aim, but your bullets are really controlled by whatever it's locked onto, it's not always going to lock onto what you want it to, and therefore you're not going to be shooting what you want. And you just don't have enough control over that ability. It's not like you hit a button and it locks on. It's an auto-lock feature, and you can't necessarily control, or at least not easily control, which enemy you are targeting. So it's crap. It's shit. It's those. Let's get into the controls, which actually the controls work fairly well. I found that they were generally responsive. I will say I didn't feel like guarding worked as well as I would have liked. I definitely felt that I was pressing the button and it was going, no you're not, no you're not, no you're not. So that did suck, but admittedly the combat is so easy in this game that I really only ended up having to heal in maybe 2 or 3 fights. And they weren't even boss fights. It was just ones where the combat wasn't working well enough for me to do well. But as for moving, attacking, pressing those buttons, and, pressing the shoot button, I think those worked well. Controlling the camera works well enough, not that it necessarily helps you with the auto-lock system, so, while the controls are honestly better than the rest of the game, and that's just sad. Now, lastly, the visuals and graphics, and visually, I gotta say, I actually like the art style. I kinda like the creature design. I like that it is a bright and colorful game, but the graphics are shit. Like, they had a cool visual idea, but the graphics that they put into the game to make that come to life are trash. And I do understand that fur is a difficult thing to do, like in CGI and whatnot. It's a difficult thing for that. But if you are going to do it, and all of your characters are going to be furry, and most of your monsters are going to be furry, then you damn sure better be able to do it well, and this game is not. It runs into that issue where they look blocky and weird, like the fur looks blocky and weird, so it doesn't look like, fur. It just looks shitty. The grass, the bushes, all of that looks really generic, and it all looks the exact same. I know they tried to do different zones, and, like I said, they tried to do different zones, and they do, but it just doesn't matter because none of it looks good. So I just don't have anything good to add to the graphics either. And it's not like that's necessarily unique. It's not like you've never played as an anthropomorphic animal before. So to wrap this up, the first thing I'm going to say in my wrap up is no, I did not beat this game. Because quite frankly, I don't hate myself enough to put that much time and effort into this game. I took a look online and saw that this game was scoring like above average, and I just can't comprehend that because at its best, this game reaches mediocrity. So not even like a 6 out of 10 that a lot of places seem to be giving it, or even close to 7 out of 10. I just can't wrap my mind around that. So to put it simply, I'm not going to go into great detail. It's a barely passable game. It exists, it functions, but it's not enjoyable. I didn't enjoy myself. 10 minutes into this game, I had no fucks left to give, and that didn't change 6-8 hours later. So do not waste your time, do not waste your money, just avoid this game. Which I will say is unfortunate because, I want smaller developers trying something, but they're not trying anything new or interesting or unique in this game. They're more focused on their message than they were making a good game. Okay, so in the comments down below, why don't you tell me what is your favorite anthropomorphic animal character? Let's stick with video games. Maybe I'll ask that another time for something else. And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share and subscribe. Have a good one.